Hello, my name is Russell Brakefield. I'm a assistant teaching professor in the university writing program, and I'm here today to talk about composing effective research posters. On the agenda for this workshop, we'll start by talking a little bit about what a research poster is and why we might want to learn how to develop them. We'll also talk a little bit about what posters look like across different disciplines, and then I'll give you some tips and tricks for assembling your own poster, presenting your poster to an audience, and thinking about some basic software advice. So why might we want to compose a research poster? Many of you are thinking about composing a research poster for the showcase. There's going to be lots of opportunities throughout your academic career and throughout your academic coursework to translate your research into a research poster, but also research posters are widely used in academic communities outside of college too. So things like academic conferences and gatherings, we often see people presenting their research using research posters. Apart from that, though, research posters can just be really helpful ways to think about your research projects, and they allow for opportunities to present your research in more immediate and accessible ways. So they really invite conversations about your research that you might not be able to have in the traditional methods of presenting that research. And for you, they also allow you an opportunity to organize and reframe your research. Think about that research in new and interesting ways. When we're composing a research poster, we're really trying to shift our way of thinking slightly. Most times when we are presenting our research, we're presenting it in written formats or maybe as a speech, very passive or static ways of presenting our research. Research posters allow you to establish your research or present your research in a visual form, which has exciting opportunities involved, but also, and this is something that some students tend to forget when we start the process of composing research posters really allow you to create dynamic ways of presenting your research and invite those conversations with people around and about your research. So maybe as a way of thinking about what research posters are, we should start by thinking about what they are not. Research posters are not research papers, and they're not comprehensive views of your research. Again, we're trying to shift from primarily text-based presentations to primarily visual presentations. So one mistake I see students making often when they're trying to develop research posters is putting too much of that language or too much of that research onto the board, and not allowing for that immediacy or that visual representation that posters can really offer. Rather, you want your research poster to be a distillation of the most critical information about your research. You want it to be a visual representation of your research, and you want it to be an invitation for people to engage you about your research, an opportunity to have those conversations and to maybe present the larger picture or the more nuanced aspects of your research through those conversations that you have with people. We'll talk a little bit today about what posters look like in different disciplines, across academic disciplines. But really, we always want to think about what those standards are within our discipline, what's going to be most appropriate for our audience within our discipline. So you will see some posters, including those standard sections or genre conventions, such as introductions, methods, results, discussions, acknowledgements, but you really get to make some decisions here about what's going to be most appropriate for your audience, venue, and within your academic discipline. And again, keep in mind that not only are we creating a visual artifact in our research poster, but we're trying to invite people who might view our poster to have a broader or a more complex conversation about that research. So make sure that you're thinking about that when you're designing your poster. You want to keep in mind audience and venue, just like we always do when we're developing writing or arguments. And as you're developing or composing your visual artifact, the actual poster itself, I'd also invite you to think a little bit about how you'll pitch that research, right? So practice a short version or an elevator pitch, a spiel about your research, And then think about how you might also answer questions that people will pose about your research, how you can have those longer, more in-depth conversations if people are asking for those. Being prepared for those different types of scenarios and different lengths of presentations is key to having a successful research poster presentation. I would also suggest thinking about possibly preparing some follow-up or takeaway materials as well. One of the great things about these poster showcases is it allows for opportunities for networking and to make connections in your field. So this might mean a simple business card or a pamphlet about your research, or I've seen some students in the past use even a QR code listed on their poster where your audience or the people viewing your poster can go and find more information about your research and more information about your academic and professional pursuits. We'll look today at some posters across different disciplines, and you will want to think about what is appropriate for your discipline when designing your posters. So what values, methodologies, and genre conventions are appropriate within your discipline, and how can you translate those values, methodologies, and genres into your poster in an interesting and unique way. So let's take a look at a few different posters here. And I'll just invite you, as we look at these posters, to think a little bit about what you notice, what stands out, some of the strengths of the design, and perhaps some things that that are challenging for you as a viewer. So this is a poster from a geography student. This is about accessing vulnerability due to sea level rise in Hawaii. Now you can see we have several things going on here. We have a lot of text, we have some tables, and we have some visuals as well. When I ask students in my in-person workshops to describe their first impressions of this poster, they almost always start by talking about the text. We have a lot of text in this poster and a lot of very small text, so much so that it's quite difficult to read. So we might ask this student to revise this slightly to make this a little bit more appealing or a little bit more accessible for our audience. Maybe condensing some of that text on the left-hand side, or pulling out the most critical or essential parts of that text to include instead. One thing that I think is working quite well in this poster is the visuals. You can see that that sea level rise depicted in the blue colors there in both of our progressive sequences of maps. And I like that those maps move from left to right in the way that we would naturally read to demonstrate that sea level rise. Here's another example of a research poster. This research poster is about an analysis of traditional Hawaiian kite flying, quite an interesting topic here. And our student has made some really interesting design choices in this poster as well. Again, I'd invite you to just maybe pause the video, take a look at this poster, and think about what's working for you as a viewer, as you engage with this poster. What stands out as successful choices, and what stands out as maybe less than successful choices. When I talk to my students, they tend to like a few things about this poster, and they tend to have some difficulties with a few things about this poster. Students tend to like the color of this poster, the unified sort of taupe orange color, and they tend to like the ways that this creator of this poster has tried to be a little bit creative in the ways that they've developed the order and flow of the poster. That being said, students, when viewing this poster, oftentimes say that it's a little chaotic. Sometimes it's hard to understand the flow. We have these really nice arrows that move us from one section of the poster to the next, but it is a little bit, I'll say, messy even in the way that it moves up and down in that N shape on the poster. It's a really good idea, I think, when designing these posters, to remember that we're going to almost always view things from left to right in the way that we normally would read things. And so moving from left to right in your design components will be a really helpful or successful choice as well. I also think we have lots of images here, but those images are very small, and it's hard to engage with those images, even close up, but especially hard to engage with those images from far away. Here's another poster. This is the USS Arizona Memorial, talking about Pearl Harbor, challenge and change in maritime heritage. Again, I'd ask you to just take a look at this and think about the things that are working in this poster, the things that are lacking in this poster as well. When I talk to students, they generally like this poster. This poster does a few things very well. We have clear images, and we have this kind of eye-catching band of images on the left side that will draw your viewer or your reader, so to speak, in. We have a lot of text on this poster, but that text is nicely organized around these specific headers. And we also have a lot of space on the poster. You can see that the creator of this poster has used some spacing techniques that makes this text easier to read. And it's very well organized. You have some spacing in between each section, but you also have spacing in between the lines themselves as well. Anything you can do to make this poster stand out visually, but also to increase the readability and the ability for your viewers to really engage on a first look is really helpful. A couple other features you can notice here. We have a nice title. We also have our affiliation pinned in the left-hand corner, University of Hawaii. You can see that there. And we also have our references section as well. You'll want to have an acknowledgement section of in some way, shape, or form on your poster, in addition to information about your research process and findings. Here's one more poster we can take a look at, and this is from a student working in art and art history, drawing from the sublime. Again, I'd ask you to take a look at this and think about what aspects of this poster are working for you, which aspects of this poster stand out as successful. My students, when talking to them in person during these workshops, usually really like this poster. This poster has a number of features that make it quite successful as a visual artifact. First and foremost, we have a really nice blue background color, and we have these 3 columns. Using these columns, I think, is a really helpful way, really great strategy to use when developing these research posters. It gives a clear sense of organization. It makes it easier to read. And ultimately, it just makes it look more professional and inviting at the same time. This student has also included a lot of great visuals, and those visuals are inset next to text that describes or correlates to those visuals. We also have a really nice sort of interesting image of the sublime happening behind the title card there. We have lots of great information here, and just a generally overall pretty successful poster. So I'd like us to think a little bit about our own work today and what types of the process with which we'll be distilling our complex research ideas into these visual artifacts, these research posters. So first and foremost, I'd just like you to pause this video for a minute and take some notes on what information will be essential to include in your poster. What is the essential aspect of your research that you want to convey? Usually for research posters, we want to convey something about the research process, our methods or methodologies, and we also want to talk about our research findings. What's the big takeaway here? So pause this video, take a few notes on what information will be essential to include in your research poster. Once you have that essential material written down, I'd like you to try to communicate that in 1 to 2 sentences. What is your elevator pitch, or your short distillation of ideas that you'll be telling people about when they walk by and view your poster? So once we have that distillation of those ideas outlined for you in some notes, once you have your materials gathered, you want to start designing your poster. And your central research ideas that you've written down should be reflected in the content of your text, in the images that you include, and in the design of your poster. So we can just take a few minutes here and start mapping out our poster. Maybe take out a piece of paper, some pens and pencils, and just map out the sequence of your poster. Are you going to use columns? Do you have some other unique or interesting design idea in mind? Start brainstorming those possible design elements. You might also want to, at this time, brainstorm some possible headings that you'll use, brainstorm which types of information you'll want to include in terms of text, and brainstorm possible images or other design elements that you'll want to include in the poster. So once we have some ideas about how we're going to design this poster, we can just back up a little bit and think about some design tips and tricks here, some things that are going to really help you to make your poster the most inviting, accessible, and interesting poster that it can be. A couple basic things here. In terms of font, keep it simple, right? We want to use basic font, probably Times New Roman, Arial, something like that. A design student of mine always likes to say, if you are calling attention to the font, then it's not a very good font, right? So you want to be really straightforward with your font use. Keep the background light with darker text. Darker backgrounds with lighter text tend to make us a little bit sleepy. They're tiring to read. So even if you are using colors, make sure to use lighter colors in the back and darker text on top of that. Be careful of using too many colors as well. I think the most successful posters choose a theme of 2 to 3 colors that really unify the poster, but don't overwhelm us as viewers, right? We still want to stay in that professional mode, even when we're presenting our research in creative or visual ways. As a rule, font size for your title should be bold and large. We're thinking about 72 to 120 point font. And font size for your content, for the text on your poster, should be large and easy to read as well. We're thinking around 28 to 48 font. In terms of images, you want to use common sense here, right? The image that you see on the right is a much stronger image than the one you see on the left. Make sure that when you are pulling images from your sources or from the internet, that you are trying to find the highest resolution photos possible. And I always try to think about what image is most representative or most indicative of my research. It's really important that your images convey something in and of themselves, right? Sometimes students put graphs or charts or tables on their research posters, and they don't work without the context of having to explain those graphs and charts. So think about it, if there is a way in which you can use those images, infographics, graphs, charts to really convey some specific crucial aspect of your research. You don't want to walk away from your poster necessarily, but if you did walk away from your poster, those images and graphs and charts should still be somewhat self-explanatory to your viewers. And always keep in mind when we are structuring our posters, when we're laying them out, readability, issues of readability. We want to organize our information to follow how your audience naturally reads, from left to right, top to bottom. You want to format your text and images into easy to read columns that stand out. You want to try and maybe stand 2 to 4 feet back from your poster and say, does that catch my eye? Is it easy to understand the progression? And does it invite people to come and engage in a conversation about my research? Use headings to direct readers to key sections of your research, and try to create a good balance of text with white space and images as well. So how do we develop these posters? I've just given you all kinds of good ideas about design and ideas about what we want our posters to achieve, but how do we develop those posters? I think the easiest way to do that is to use PowerPoint. If you're someone who is very tech savvy and wants to use InDesign or Adobe or something like that, by all means, but PowerPoint is a really simple, effective way to create these posters. So what you're going to do in PowerPoint, you're going to create one slide, which will be your poster. And then you're going to set the size of that slide to 36 inches in height and 42 inches in width. And this is a relatively easy process. in PowerPoint, you're going to select the Design tab on the toolbar ribbon. Then you're going to select Slide Size near the far right. And then you're going to go down and push Customize Size. And then you want to change that manually to 36 inches in height and 42 inches in width. You're going to save this when you're finished working on it as a JPG. And then you're going to print that using DU printing services, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. Once you have your poster printed, it's your job to find a poster backing, a big piece of cardboard or something like that, that you can tape or glue or tack your poster to, and then you'll be ready to present. Once you have finished a draft of your poster, you can come back to this checklist to evaluate whether your poster is successful based on some of the design elements that we've talked about today. So some questions you might ask of yourself as you start to reach a point where you feel confident about your poster. One, how effective is the overall appearance? Does it look good? Is your use of text, images, and colors effective, both from an aesthetic perspective, but also in line with those genre conventions for your discipline, as we talked about before? Are text and images well balanced, with more images than text, but with enough text to understand the significance of those images? I like to think about, when I'm deciding what text to place on my poster, is there a way that I might represent this with an image? If not, then how can I distill this to the very essence of its meaning in a small block of text? Is the text easy to read from a distance of 3 to 4 feet? Stand back, take a look. Is it easy to follow the organization and flow of the poster? Again, are we moving from left to right? Do we have clearly established sections and columns that guide our reader through the experience of our research? Are the main research findings explicitly highlighted? Is there enough information to contact you, the author? Again, I would make sure to have your name and your affiliations represented clearly on that poster. And then maybe we can also offer some takeaway materials as well. Did you include an acknowledgement section? And lastly, are you prepared to explain your work to scholars who are both in your field and then scholars who are not in your field? So you want to really prepare a pitch for scholars who are already well-versed in the material of your research, but also maybe people who have no clue about your field or about the research that you're doing as well. Here is an example of a student's poster who needed to do some revision work. And I'll show you the example of the initial draft of the poster and then a revised version as well. So I would ask, if we were together in person, for you to just take a look at this poster, and based on our conversation today, to think about what design elements are not working. What aspects of this poster need some revision or improvement? As you can see, there are several things going on here that just kind of make this poster a little bit difficult to read, and make our experience of viewing the poster a little bit less than ideal. So, first we could start with font, right? We have some really light font, that peachy colored light font on a light background. And especially when it comes to our headings and our main takeaways here, it's really difficult to read those, and therefore really difficult to get a sense of what the main point of this research might be. In addition, the graphs and charts, because they have a black background, also very difficult to read. I'm also interested in the title here, Rooting Fraser Fir Cuttings. Not a whole lot of, I can't make a lot of sense of that, right? As someone who doesn't know a lot about botany or trees, right? As just an average person walking by this poster, I'm not going to be drawn in by that title. So I asked the student to do some revisions here, and let's see what they came up with. So right away, we have a much stronger title, Improving the Rooting Ability of Fraser Fir Cuttings. We have our goal more clearly outlined at the top. And we've also used some of those design considerations that we talked about today to make this more visually appealing and to make it more easy to navigate as a viewer or as a reader. You can see those darker colored fonts on light backgrounds, and the graphs there are placed on a white background, which makes them pop a little bit more and makes them much more and much easier to navigate, I would say. So as you're working, I would invite you to go through this design process, come back to this evaluation and see, just make sure that you've checked off these boxes. It's also going to be helpful during this process to have a couple people look at your work as well, to get some feedback on your poster before you print it out, to get a second or a third set of eyes. And we in the Writing Center are always happy to help out with that if you schedule a consultation to talk with us. Lastly, printing posters. So once you are happy with your poster, you have to find a way to print that poster. We in the Writing Center, our writing program, are willing to print those posters out. We just have to have a little bit of time leading up to that so that we can do it. We're not a print shop, but we're happy to help out at a low cost to you. So if you get it to us within, and you need it within 2 weeks notice, the cost is usually around $10. If you need that within 7 to 13 days notice, the cost is around $25. So if you're planning ahead for the showcase or for another event, make sure to contact us with enough time so that we can print that for you. Anyone who attends a Writing Center poster workshop or presentation such as this can sign up for a free poster printing. And if you'd like more information about this, I've included that link there, which has some information about poster printing on the writing program website. And you can also contact Joe Ponce at joe.ponce@du.edu. That email is there for you. He can give you more information about how to get your poster printed, timelines, and pricing. I hope you learned something about poster design and composing effective research posters today. I would invite you to touch base with the Writing Center if you have additional questions about posters, or if you want additional help with that, or if you need any help at all with your writing or research needs. We are there. We offer free interactive online consultations, as well as in-person consultations and workshops for groups of three on any writing topic. You can find lots of more information about the Writing Center on their website there, portfolio.edu/writing center, or by contacting writingcenter@du.edu. Thank you so much for coming today. I hope I wish you all the best with your poster making journey, and have a nice day.